Before starting with the tutorial, let's take a minute to familiarize ourselves with the FreeCAD layout. As we launch the program, we'll notice that we're greeted by the Start menu. Now there are 4 distinct regions in the Start menu. There's the File menu, there's the Toolbars, there's the Task menu over here on the left-hand side, and there's the main window. When we start FreeCAD, we're introduced to the Start module, which lists updates to the source code, as well as several commonly used modules within FreeCAD that we might use. Today we'll start with the Part Design module. So we'll click on the Part Design module, and we look at the Task menu over on the left-hand side. We can see that there are several options: a sketch, we can create a cube, or we can create a cylinder. And now we have the option of creating which plane we want to select. But we'll use the XY plane, and we'll start creating the sketch using a rectangle tool. The rectangle tool creates sides constrained to the horizontal and vertical direction. The next thing we want to do is create a symmetry lines, clicking the line tool. We'll drag it down. As we drag it down, we'll automatically once again create a vertical constraint, but we would like this line to stay in the middle of the part. And so we'll use the symmetry tool to do so. And we'll click on the node or the vertex. We'll go up, and there's 2 arrows pointing to each other, and that means the symmetry tool. We can also use constraints to define dimensions. So here we are defining a dimension. My default units are in millimeters, but FreeCAD knows how to convert between inches and millimeters. And so if we type 2.5 inches, it'll automatically convert to millimeters. Our next step is to click on the line, and we'll change it to a construction line. Now, construction lines are ignored when the sketch is extruded, and they're used simply to help us to build the part. Since I wanted a perfect square, I referenced the line that was already dimensioned and the line that comes in at a 90-degree angle, and I was able to make those the same length. And so no matter what I change, the 2.5 inch dimension, the other dimension will change with it. And once again, use the symmetry constraint in order to constrain it. And that becomes important if we want to make any future modifications to the part. Instead of a 2.5 inch, we want a 3-inch cube. This will automatically update both sides at once. Now we'll notice that once we selected that last line, the entire sketch turned green. And over on the left-hand side, it says it's a fully constrained sketch. What this means is that not only can it build the part, but all the features on the part are well defined. And while it's not required to have a fully defined sketch, it helps with building later on, as we know that dimensions will not change. Come over close to the sketch, and we'll extrude, or in this case, pad the sketch. And this gives us our 2-dimensional sketch into a 3-dimensional solid object. We can assign a dimension to that, a height to that dimension. We'll click OK, and now we have our very first 3-dimensional object. Now we want to select one of the surfaces to cut slots. Click on Create Sketch. We'll then bring out the geometry of the sketch, and we do so by clicking on this button and selecting the line. We'll then create a multiple poly surface, and I'm trying to make these lines as straight as possible so that we can take advantage of the automatic constraining methods. And the ones that we do not have, we will go ahead and do later. So we'll zoom in, see, and then so now as you can see, we can move all these lines around at different angles. We'll make that one horizontal, so we'll click on the horizontal constraint. I want to make sure it's in the middle of the part, and so once again we'll use the tool on geometry, and make it in the middle of the part. We'll just simply make these 2 lines equal to each other, and these 2 lines equal to each other as well. Now this version of FreeCAD has a bug where it will not allow you to select the vertices while they are in the 3-dimensional model, and so we'll work around that simply by taking the parts and dragging them around. And eventually we'll drag the lines off the part, which will allow us to select those vertices and dimension as we want. And so you can see right now that there are several red lines. Now this bug has already been fixed, and the most recent versions of FreeCAD, you won't experience the same problem. Now use the dimension constraint in order to constrain these to the position that we want them. move the dimension off the part so that we can see it later on. As you can see that we simply only have a two-dimensional sketch on a three-dimensional object, and now we'll need to extrude a cut, so we'll close the sketch. We'll click on Pocket, through all. Okay, and as you can see, we've now created a sketch, or a very nice line through the part. We can then revolve this around a common axis, and we'll select the one in the back right-hand corner, and we'll revolve it 4 times. And what this will do is now whatever we do to that very first sketch we did, it will demonstrate it on the next pattern. So now we've created the base block for our double crank slider. It's interesting to note that we can't 3D print this. There are overhangs in all the dimensions, and there's not one orientation that we can place this part in such that we could 3D print it. So we've got to go back and we've got to edit the part. Now we can't print overhangs, but we can print 45-degree angles. And so what we'll do is we'll select the lines that we've already made. As you can see me going in and selecting those lines. We'll make them construction lines. We'll select all 4 of them and then click the blue construction line. Now these lines are ignored, but we can use them to build off the parts. So we'll click the line tool. And we'll build it up. We'll rejoin those lines together. The same on the other side. Now, hypothetically, we should be able to print a 45-degree slope. And so what we've done now is we've created lines in order to create that slope. We'll go back and we'll use the angular constraint, which is over here. And we'll constrain that to be 135 degrees, or 45 degrees from the vertical. We'll extend the base a little bit so we don't have a sharp corner, but it won't really affect us very much if we do not. Once again, we'll change the angle on this part as well. And now we have a 3-dimensional part. Now the reason why we did the revolution is we don't have to go back and do it for the other side. Those parts are updated as we update the original feature, which is very nice. And now this part can be 3D printed. You can imagine that if we placed it down on a surface. So we'll export it as an STL. Come in, it's under. Select an STL. And export it. This concludes the tutorial.